Now you can watch the InfoWars Nightly News streaming live as it happens for free.
Check it out at infowars.com/show.
And welcome back. Our guest tonight is no stranger to the show. He is Sheriff Richard Mack. You can go to the InfoWars shop and pick up his book, Sheriff Mack's The Magic of Gun Control. Now he's going to be discussing with us the Florida sheriff who had been suspended for respecting a man's Second Amendment rights, as well as many other topics. He joins us now via phone. Thanks for joining us, Sheriff.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you coming back on our show. Now, Sheriff, we have many topics we want to address, but first off, I saw this article on your site I guess just last week. Florida sheriff arrested after defending Second Amendment. Now, we've reported on this here at Infowars.com, but Sheriff, do you have any new information on this?
Well, I've talked to the sheriff several times. I've talked to his lawyer several times, and again today, even though I was in Albany, New York for a big Second Amendment rally. This is what happened. A deputy sheriff stopped a man for a traffic stop. The probable cause for that stop was a little bit suspect, and according to the sheriff there, very suspect. He didn't agree with the probable cause. Thought the deputy fudged a little bit on the probable cause, and then the Mr. Parrish, who was arrested at the time, had a gun in his car, and it was readily visible. The officer saw it. Mr. Parrish, the citizen, said, "Yes, I have a gun on the seat." And then the deputy asked him if he had another weapon in the car. He said, "I have one in my pocket." And so the deputy took him out and frisked him, shook him down, took both guns, ran them NCIC, and then decided to arrest Mr. Parrish because he doesn't have a concealed carry permit. So Sheriff Finch does not believe that the Second Amendment is subject to a permission slip from government. And so he didn't believe that the probable cause for the original stop was solid.
Right.
He didn't believe that there was probable cause for frisking the man physically and doing a TSA search. And he didn't believe that the man should be arrested. He's not a criminal. He had no criminal intent.
Right.
And Sheriff Finch had never met this man before. Sheriff Finch took office January 1st of this year. He's trying to do a good job, and he doesn't believe in violating the Second Amendment.
Now, Sheriff, before we go any further, we'll talk about the actions of Sheriff Finch. But in your opinion, we have a traffic stop, and one of your officers, one of your deputies, asked the gentleman, "Do you have a firearm?" Do you condone that action, just asking if the man has a firearm in his vehicle?
No, never. In fact, I told my deputies, you consider everybody armed. You don't go up and ask somebody if they're armed, and they tell you no, then you don't think they're armed. That's absurd. That's stupid law enforcement. Right. And that's stupid police work. You never think that. And not only that, because you find out that a guy has one gun, he could have two or three more. You know, he shows you one and shoots you with the other. Right. So it just doesn't make any sense for cops to do that.
Okay, and, Sheriff, now as far as...
that they do it nationwide.
Right. Now, Sheriff, as far as being arrested for that charge, having a concealed weapon in his vehicle, do you see any problem with that?
No, there's no problem with that whatsoever. You can keep and bear arms however you like. In fact, I recommend that people who have guns keep them concealed. It creates much less alarm than having guns sit out and you having to explain to everybody why you have a gun on. Or if you wear a gun downtown on the street, which is totally legal in many states in this country, especially Arizona where I live, people are going to ask you, what do you have a gun on for? Or they're going to call 911. This man has a gun. So what? It's legal, it's lawful, and it's appropriate, and it's a guaranteed right.
Exactly. Now, Sheriff, you were in your story, you're telling us what happened after Nick Finch heard about this incident.
Well, when Sheriff Finch heard about it, he went down to the jail, and he looked at the booking sheet, and he verified the information. and he didn't like what he saw. So he, what I term, unarrested the man, and he released him, and he did away with the charges. If you do that, you're certainly within your rights as a sheriff to do that. You run the sheriff's office. The deputy works for you. That's what a deputy means. It means you're working in his bed. So he said, we're not going to arrest this man for that. He's not a criminal. And so he would also be inclined to destroy the booking sheet upon which are the records that this man was arrested.
Now, well, Sheriff, if we can stop right there and clarify, if you can clarify for us. So at the point Nicholas Finch, the sheriff, goes in and says, hey, this man shouldn't have been arrested in the first place, does that null and void the arrest completely?
Of course it does. Yeah, that's what the sheriff's job is.
Okay.
And I've done similar things. You know, you tell your deputies. I told my deputies not to write tickets for people not wearing a seatbelt. If they did, I got rid of it. You know, it was the law, but supposed law. But I believe that that is something that people should choose on their own.
Exactly.
And here, the sheriff makes the choices as to who is arrested in his office. He is the constitutionally elected sheriff of that county.
Exactly. Now, Sheriff, if we can move on, we have some other topics we have to get to. So I just want to talk about Nicholas Finch. He releases the man back out onto the street. And what happened after that with the governor?
Well, then 2 or 3 of the deputies within the sheriff's office who didn't want Sheriff Finch to be elected in the first place, you know, that's very common to have enemies within, and you're not always able to get rid of them. And so they're not loyal, they don't support you, but they still do their job. Okay, so these deputies complained to the Florida Division of Law Enforcement, the state agency. They investigated the sheriff without ever interviewing the sheriff. They filed charges against the sheriff. The attorney general filed charges, and they arrested Sheriff Finch for a felony for destroying public records. What a farce.
Yes.
Then the governor of the state suspended Sheriff Finch and suspended him without pay.
Wow.
So he is no longer on the job.
Does he have any plans to get back in the saddle? Do you know anything about that?
Yes, he does. He plans to fight this. His attorney is Jim Judkins out of Tallahassee. Liberty County is close to Tallahassee. And quite frankly, this is just the way it is. We are proceeding with this. Sheriff Finch is going to fight this all the way. He is not going to take a plea bargain. He wants his job back. He wants his reputation back. And he wants to be back in the office that the people of Liberty County elected him to do.
Exactly. Now, Sheriff, do you know if there's any way to support Sheriff Finch? Does he have a website or anything that people can contact him through?
He doesn't yet. We're raising money for him at CSPOA. So if you would like to make a donation, just make it to Sheriff Finch. Just go to cspoa.org. That's Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. And when it asks you for notes, or just say, put Sheriff Finch. So you can make it sure that it's flagged to Sheriff Finch. And we are trying to raise money for him desperately. He's going to be out of money very soon, as he has no other job. And he and his family are going to be pretty tight for money. And paying his attorneys is going to be something that we're going to help with also.
Okay, definitely glad to see that on your site right there. Now, Sheriff, we'll move on to some other topics. Now, or at least you were in New York this week. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, I'm still in Albany. We just left the state capitol about 10 minutes ago.
Okay, now tell us what you're doing up there.
Well, it's the SAFE Act is the gun control law that New York and Cuomo and Bloomberg all were supporting here. That makes it illegal to have an assault rifle or any kind of magazine that's over 7 rounds.
Right.
Including law enforcement, by the way, and the law enforcement community is really upset.
Yeah, that was a pretty big oversight. You don't allow your law officers to carry the sufficient number of rounds.
So anyway, we met with some sheriffs today. There's a lot of good sheriffs here. And get this, 52 out of the 62 counties in New York State have opposed the SAFE Act. And you know, all these politicians, They want to call it the SAFE Act.
Mm-hmm.
What it is really, it's the Arrest the Law-Abiding Citizen Act. It's the Arrest the Law-Abiding Gun Owner Act. And it has nothing to do with safety, as you very well know. Things that we've talked about on Alex Jones' show numerous times, talking about how gun control does not keep us safer.
Exactly. And a journalist, if I can interrupt you, Sheriff, a journalist confronted Mayor Bloomberg and said, Mayor Bloomberg, will you have your private security force disarmed or have them carry fewer than 7 rounds? And he said, I'll get back to you on that. Yeah.
And the sheriffs were being so strong in opposing Governor Cuomo and the others here that, get this, Governor Cuomo called in some of the sheriffs and actually told them to shut up and get on board. And then he denied saying it.
I believe that. They're trying to muscle the sheriffs around, but we can see sheriffs like yourself, sheriffs like Nick Finch, many others we've had on the show are just not putting up with this.
Well, yeah, of course, and no sheriff in the country should. And so finally we have these sheriffs who are standing and doing what's right. You know, Sheriff Finch didn't call me and say, hey, I want a lot of publicity because I released a man. He was just doing his job. He didn't ask for any publicity. He didn't ask for any awards or plaques. He was just doing his job. And now we find out he got arrested, so we are coming to his aid. We are hoping every sheriff does the exact same thing in their counties.
Exactly, because that's what Alex was talking about. You know, we asked people like yourself and other sheriffs, and not just sheriffs, but other officials to come to our aid and stand up for what's right. And, you know, when the times get tough, we have to support people.
And I think I know Alex has done the same thing. We've heard of state nullification. This is sheriff nullification. And it's absolutely true and something he should be doing. And I'm thrilled that sheriffs all across this country are now doing it.
Exactly. Now, Sheriff, we have to move on to some other topics. I want to ask you briefly, you're probably familiar with Austin Police Commissioner Art Acevedo. We had him on, well, actually I had a chance to meet him about a month or so ago, and he said his law is to enforce the laws as passed. Now, he is he's in the police department, you're in the sheriff's department, but do you agree with that statement that his job is to enforce the laws as passed?
For some of these elected sheriffs that are saying we would not, who is part of what branch am I? Executive branch. You can't say that you stand for the Constitution as an elected sheriff, law enforcement official, as part of the executive branch, invoke the Constitution in terms of the Second Amendment and turn around and absolutely ignore the rest of our 200 years of law that talks about the separation of powers. You are the executive branch. Whether you like it or not, your job is to enforce the law as passed.
Well, is he ever going to keep his oath of office? I want to ask him that. But I want to ask him also, if he was the chief of police in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955 when Rosa Parks was arrested for failing to give her seat to a white man, would he enforce that law too? Well, would he have arrested Rosa Parks?
Well, that'd be a good question. He says he wants to enforce the laws as passed. I'm not putting any words in his mouth. That's his quote.
Yeah, that was a law. That was a law. Is he going to arrest everybody for jaywalking? Is he going to arrest everybody who rolls through a stop sign? Is he going to arrest everybody who now New York has implemented a law called annoy a cop and go to jail?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm glad you brought that up, Sheriff. What do you think about that one?
That's got to be the epitome of insanity, even for New York. And so when I spoke at the rally today, that's the first thing I said. I had to come here and find out if New York is so stupid as to make a law against annoying a cop.
Right.
So these police officers, nobody, not that chief and nobody else, enforces all laws. That's absolutely absurd. We don't do it. We're not robots. We're not programmed. We are people. And to lose our sense of humanity and compassion is the worst thing any cop can do. And for anybody to get up and say, I enforce all laws and that's my job, first thing I'll say is he's a liar because that's not true. And secondly, I want to ask, would you arrest Rosa Parks and would you arrest her today if that was still the law?
Well, if we ever get him back on, we'll ask him that question. Now, Sheriff, we'll move on. I have this article right here, if we can pull this up. Man charged with DUI despite blowing .000 during breathalyzer tests. I'm not sure if you heard about this one, Sheriff. This was a gentleman. he was arrested, just like it says, he had bloodshot eyes, but he had bloodshot eyes because he had been swimming earlier. He encounters an officer during a stop. The officer says, give me the breath test. He passes the breath test, but he's arrested anyway because he had bloodshot eyes.
Well, it's going to be really hard for that charge to stick, obviously, but if he could document a horrible driving pattern and other probable cause, then the officer might be justified. But if he can't prove any other drugs, and if he can't prove any level of intoxication, then somebody else needs to step in and do the Sheriff Finch thing and unarrest that man.
Exactly. Now, Sheriff, in closing, we were talking a little bit before we went on the air. You're investigating or a part of an investigation with Sheriff Arpaio?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, sir?
Well, we just had our convention in St. Charles, Missouri, and so we wanted to hear the truth, and I've already seen this before because I have been close with Sheriff Arpaio in Phoenix, and he is a good friend of mine, and so I've looked at the evidence before, and I wanted to show all our other police officers and sheriffs the same evidence and have them decide for themselves as to whether or not the birth certificate released by the White House regarding the birth of Barack Obama, if it really is fraudulent. And it appears to me that it absolutely is.
Now, Sheriff, can you elaborate a little bit on that, on the evidence that you found? Because a lot of people, they hear, oh, these birthers, you know, these guys are beating a dead horse. What information have you found?
Well, he's found a lot. First of all, they've taken off 9 layers of the birth certificate, and in doing so, they have found that the person who did it, who actually did this fraudulent birth certificate, did not have the correct chronological order of the number system back in 1961 or 62, whenever it was, that was used by the health department in Hawaii at the time. So first, the chronological order of the number system on the birth certificate does not match. And then you also look at the font system used by, well, not computers back then, because there was only typewriters back then.
Right.
If you look at the font used by the typewriters back in those days, it doesn't match either. And there's lots and lots of other things that add to this, some circumstantial, but there's so much more evidence that is irrefutable that would stand up in any court of law. And I will say the same thing that Sheriff Arpaio told me. I don't know where Barack Obama was born. We have not investigated where he was born. What we investigated was the birth certificate released by the White House saying that claiming he was born in Hawaii.
Okay.
There might be another birth certificate. Maybe they couldn't find his old birth certificate. Maybe his mom lost it. But the birth certificate released by the White House that was on their website saying this is his birth certificate is a lie, a fake, and a fraud.
Now, Sheriff,
and what I can't believe is that more people aren't paying more attention to this story.
Exactly. Now, if people are interested in the birth certificate, where can they find more information on that?
Well, I don't think that anything has actually been published, but if they want to email me, I can email them back what I have. I'm actually meeting with Detective Zulo next week. I was supposed to meet with him yesterday, but I decided to come out to New York and help the people here save their Second Amendment.
That's right. So that's very important.
If any of them want to email me, that's fine, and that's Sheriff Mack at Hotmail.
All right. Now, Sheriff Mack, can you give us your closing thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you what. I really think that this is, like Dickens said in The Tale of Two Cities, this is the best of times, and it's the worst of times. We actually have sheriffs standing. We have other public officials standing for the holy cause of liberty and standing for their oath of office and the Constitution. We have living proof now that this is working. And I ask everyone to join me at the CSPOA.org and help us continue this tremendous effort, this tremendous movement to restore freedom to America, one sheriff, one county at a time. It's starting to work. You can do it. Please join with us. And I want to thank Alex and you for all the support that you've given us. And please believe and please have hope for America, because this is starting to work.
All right, Sheriff Mack, sheriffmack.com. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
There goes Sheriff Richard Mack, somebody who's been fighting for Second Amendment rights for a long time. Not just Second Amendment rights, just all rights for free people. And more on that, you can go to the InfoWars shop and pick up his book, Sheriff Mack's The Magic of Gun Control. He dedicated this to Rosa Parks and others, not just people who stand up for their Second Amendment rights, but all rights. And also check out his site, sheriffmack.com. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the InfoWars Nightly News. Thanks to Sheriff Mack, the great crew, and also Leanne McAdoo for giving us that Bilderberg breakdown. I'm Jakari Jackson, and we'll see you next time.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.